In a world where appearances can make or break a person's reputation, one woman found herself at the center of a cruel joke that no one could have predicted. It all started with a designer bag, or rather, the accusation that it wasn't real. To the outside world, it looked like any other fake accessory, and her so-called friends had no problem mocking her for it. "Why bother pretending?" they'd say. "It's obvious you can't afford a real one." But what they didn't know was that the truth was far more shocking than they could ever imagine. Her name was Claire, and while she had always been a quiet, reserved woman, the ridicule was starting to wear on her. She tried to shrug it off, but the whispers and laughs behind her back became impossible to ignore. It was hard to stay confident when everyone around you seemed to think you were pretending to be something you weren't. Little did they know, Claire's husband, Daniel, had been quietly watching it all unfold, and he wasn't about to let the truth stay hidden for much longer. As the mocking continued to escalate, Daniel finally decided it was time to reveal the truth, but not in the way anyone would expect. In the next moments, the lies, the gossip, and the assumptions would come crashing down. What was really behind the designer bag, and how would the world react when they found out? The suspense hung in the air, and what happened next would change everything. But before the big reveal, one question remained: could Claire handle the storm that was about to come? Claire had always been the kind of person who preferred to stay out of the spotlight. She loved the quiet moments with her family and had always taken pride in being humble. Daniel, her husband, was her rock. A successful businessman with a reputation for being sharp and private, he had always taken care of the financial side of things, allowing Claire to focus on their home and children. But the designer bag, that one luxury item she had bought for herself on a whim, had become the subject of endless gossip. The bag was stunning, no doubt. Its sleek leather, shiny hardware, and perfectly crafted design made it clear it was something special. But for Claire, it wasn't about showing off. She had saved up for months to afford it, hoping to indulge in something she could enjoy just for herself. When she first bought it, she felt proud. But as the teasing grew louder, that pride began to wane, replaced by an uncomfortable feeling that made her second-guess everything she had done. Her friends, once supportive, began to distance themselves. They would gather for lunches, whispering behind her back and exchanging knowing glances when Claire walked into the room. "She thinks we can't tell it's fake," one of them had said, laughing. "It's so obvious, isn't it?" Another one would smile sweetly and ask, "Where did you get that bag, Claire? I thought only celebrities could afford one like that." As much as she tried to laugh it off, Claire could feel the sting of each comment. Her confidence was slipping, and she wondered if she had made a huge mistake. But Daniel knew better. He had been silent through it all, quietly observing. The tension between them began to grow, as Claire could tell something was weighing heavily on his mind. What did he know that she didn't? Why had he stayed so quiet? The truth was coming, but Claire wasn't sure she was ready to hear it. Would it change everything she thought she knew about her life? As days passed, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She had always trusted Daniel, but his silence was starting to feel like a distant, unspoken warning. Every time she tried to talk to him about the teasing, about the comments from her so-called friends, he would nod sympathetically but say little else. It was almost as if he was deliberately avoiding the conversation. That, in itself, was unusual. Daniel was never one to shy away from difficult talks, especially when it came to protecting her. At first, she told herself it was just his way of handling things. He wasn't the type to let drama or small issues affect him, so maybe he was just waiting for her to move past it. But deep down, Claire knew something else was at play. She had seen that look in his eyes when he glanced at her bag, a mix of concern and something else, something Claire couldn't quite place. It made her heart race, but she was too scared to confront him. What if she was overthinking it? What if she was making something out of nothing? Meanwhile, the whispers from her friends were growing louder. A lunch gathering at the local cafe turned into another round of gossip disguised as innocent questions. "It must feel good to treat yourself once in a while," one of them said with a tight smile. But Claire saw the judgment lurking beneath the words. Another friend, Mia, whom she had known for years, caught her alone in the bathroom and whispered, "You know, everyone's talking about that bag. They're starting to think you're trying too hard to fit in. Are you sure it's really you?" Claire's mind raced. Had her friends known all along that something wasn't right? Or was it all in her head? And why was Daniel acting so distant? She couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something far more complicated than she understood was happening behind the scenes. What was Daniel hiding, and why was he keeping her in the dark? The days stretched on, and the pressure on Claire began to mount. Each time she walked into a room, it felt like the eyes of her friends were trained on her, judging her every move. The mocking whispers followed her like a shadow, and Claire's once unshakable confidence had dwindled to nothing. She started doubting herself in ways she never had before. Was it truly just a bag, or was it a symbol of everything she had failed to live up to? Every word her friends said echoed in her mind, pushing her deeper into a spiral of self-doubt. Daniel, meanwhile, grew more distant with each passing day. He'd come home late from work, his phone glued to his hand, and his conversations with her had become shorter, colder. Claire had tried to bring up the issue again, but Daniel had only responded with vague assurances. "Don't worry about what they think, Claire. You're better than that," he would say, but his tone lacked the warmth it once had. There was no reassurance in his words, only a strange sense of detachment that unsettled her. The tipping point came when Claire found herself alone in their living room one evening, staring at the bag again. She ran her fingers over the smooth leather, but this time, instead of the excitement she once felt, all she felt was dread. What was the truth behind this bag, and why was Daniel so quiet about it? Her mind raced as she tried to piece it together. That was when Daniel walked in. He didn't greet her, didn't acknowledge the bag. Instead, he walked straight past her, his expression unreadable. Claire felt her heart skip a beat. There was something in the air, a heaviness, an unspoken tension that had finally reached its breaking point. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat. This was it, the moment she had been dreading, the moment when everything would change. She couldn't escape the question anymore. What was Daniel hiding? Claire watched Daniel carefully as he moved around the room, his back to her, his shoulders tense. Her hands clenched into fists as she struggled to find the courage to speak. The weight of everything that had been building between them hung in the air, thick and suffocating. It was as though she could hear the ticking of a clock in her mind, counting down to something she couldn't quite grasp. "Daniel," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper, "we need to talk." He paused, but didn't turn around. For a long moment, there was nothing but the sound of his breathing, and Claire felt an icy chill settle in her chest. "About what?" he asked, his tone flat, almost too calm. Her heart pounded as she stood up, taking a step toward him. "About the bag, about everything. Why are you avoiding me? What's going on?" There was a long silence before Daniel slowly turned to face her. His eyes were different, distant, almost unreadable. For a moment, Claire thought he might say something reassuring, but instead, he exhaled deeply, his gaze dropping to the floor. "I didn't want you to find out this way," he said quietly, almost as if speaking to himself. "Find out what?" Claire's voice trembled now, her anxiety rising. Daniel hesitated, his lips tight. "Claire, that bag, it's not what you think it is, but it's not fake either." Her stomach twisted. She didn't know whether to feel relief or fear. "What does that mean?" she whispered. Daniel took a deep breath, his hands shaking. "I bought it for you, but not with the money you think." His eyes finally met hers, and what she saw made her heart drop. "That bag is connected to something I've kept hidden from you, something I never wanted you to know." The room seemed to close in on Claire as she tried to process his words. What could he possibly mean? What truth was he keeping from her all this time? Claire's mind raced as Daniel's words hung in the air. "Something I never wanted you to know." What could it be? Was it a lie? a secret so deep that he had kept it hidden for years. "Daniel, please just tell me. What are you hiding?" Claire's voice cracked with frustration and fear, her hands trembling as she reached for him. He met her gaze, his face full of regret. "The bag. It's not about status or luxury. It's connected to my business. Something I did, something I had to keep from you." He paused, his jaw clenched. "I wasn't just protecting you from judgment. I was protecting you from the truth about how I got the money to buy it." Claire felt a cold shiver run through her. Her instincts screamed at her, but she couldn't put the pieces together. What did his business have to do with a designer bag? The tension in the room was suffocating, and the silence that followed felt like an eternity. "Do you remember the night I went away for that business trip last year?" Daniel asked, his voice heavy with guilt. Claire nodded, confusion still clouding her thoughts. "I didn't just go on a business trip. I made a deal with someone. Someone who asked for a favor in return. The bag, the money for it, it was part of paying off a debt." Claire's heart dropped. "A debt? What kind of deal?" Daniel's expression softened with sorrow. "I didn't want you to know. But the truth is, Claire, that bag, it's a symbol of something darker, something I got involved in before I met you. And now those people, they're back, and they want more than just the money." Before she could process his words, the doorbell rang. Claire froze, the air thick with dread. Daniel's face paled. "It's them," he whispered. Suddenly, the world shifted, and Claire realized that the life she thought she knew was about to unravel. She wasn't just caught in a lie, she was standing at the edge of something far more dangerous. Claire's breath caught in her throat as Daniel's words hung in the air. The ringing doorbell seemed to echo in her mind, and her heart raced with a mix of fear and disbelief. "It's them," Daniel whispered again, his face pale. The truth was unraveling in front of her, and Claire realized that what she thought was a simple misunderstanding about a designer bag was something far more sinister. Daniel took a step back, his eyes darting toward the door, then back to Claire. "I never wanted you involved in this, Claire. But now it's too late. The deal I made, it's caught up with me." Her mind was spinning. The man she had married, the one she trusted with everything, had been living with a dark secret all this time. Claire thought of the quiet nights they'd spent, the laughter they shared, the life they built together. She had no idea that underneath it all, Daniel was hiding something this dangerous. With a deep breath, Claire walked toward the door. There was no turning back now. "Let's face it together," she said, her voice steady despite the fear threatening to consume her. When she opened the door, two men stood in the doorway, their expressions cold. One of them looked over at Claire with barely a glance. "Is he ready to pay up?" he asked, his voice gruff. Daniel nodded, his jaw tight. The tension was palpable, but there was a strange finality to the moment. The men stepped inside, and for the first time in years, Claire felt the weight of the life they'd built shift under her feet. But then, in an unexpected turn, Daniel reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. "This is the last of it," he said, handing it over. The men took the envelope without a word and left as quickly as they came, leaving Claire to process everything in stunned silence. As the door closed behind them, Daniel turned to her, his expression full of regret. "I should have told you sooner," he said softly. Claire's eyes filled with tears, but she wasn't angry. Not anymore. They had faced the truth together. And though it was messy and painful, it was their truth. The weight of the past was finally lifting, and for the first time, Claire felt a small sense of relief. As she looked at Daniel, she realized that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they could face them together, stronger, wiser, and ready to rebuild the life they both deserved.